I'm not doing everything on my own. I'm trying to share my experiences, my knowledge, my frameworks of what has worked for me in the past. But they chose to do this because of a reason that was generated from themselves, within themselves. No other reason, right? A lot of entrepreneurs are people who are very, very passionate about what they're doing, which they should be. But the passion should not be at the extent of taking away other aspects of their lives.
Welcome to an episode by Pace Wisdom, the podcast that brings you inspiring stories and insights from successful entrepreneurs and unsung heroes. Today we have shot a powerful episode with Ravi Narayan of T-Hub and Microsoft Ventures and a mentor to many global startups. Ravi played a very incremental role in making Bangalore a startup capital. His vision actually transformed many accelerator programs. He has mentored many startups and brought in many values to companies across the globe. This podcast can be a very interesting one for many right out there. How a mentor can shape a successful journey for an entrepreneur is listed right here. Don't miss to watch this. Tune in now. Ravi, welcome to an episode by Pace Wisdom. Thank you. Thanks for making it in a very short notice, Ravi.
Thank you for inviting me.
Indeed, my pleasure. I have some set of questions which I felt very interesting because I know that you are one of the incremental reasons for the startup culture in startups, and I was all excited to see how we can take this forward. There are some viewers who are very, very inclined towards startup ecosystem, and I just want everybody to get some great glimpse of what we're going to speak. Thank you, Ravi. Thanks again. Ravi, you have been an engineer, architect, mentor, and you are now on the part of a startup ecosystem and as an architect. From IIT Madras to Silicon Valley and way back to India after some good stint in the Silicon Valley, what was the first project or role that made you think in terms of systems ahead of or systems instead of products, if I have to ask you this question?
Yeah. So first of all, it's really nice to be here, sharing my experiences. I'm also thinking, I'm at a place in my life where, I'm not doing everything on my own. I'm trying to share my experiences, my knowledge, my frameworks of what has worked for me in the past, to see if they can help other people. So, Ivaga, can I speak in
Kannada? You can.
Yeah.
By all means, whatever you're comfortable, yeah.
Yeah, so, sometimes you just feel that, you go through certain sets of stages of life. In the early stages, you're always learning,
Okay.
What we call in the Sanatan Dharma as the Brahmacharya. You're always learning.
Correct.
You have no responsibilities. Just make sure that you're learning everything that you can as much as possible.
Correct.
Thereafter, you go to a next stage where you feel that you have to take on responsibilities. All the way from making money for yourself, making money for the organization that you're putting together, and making money for potentially your investors, your customers, your stakeholders is important because you're taking care of all of them. That is your Grahastha Ashrama.
Correct.
And then you come to
Vanaprastha.
the Vanaprastha Ashrama, where you don't necessarily do everything, but you have the vantage point to give back to other people who are now in the Brahmacharya and the Grahastha Ashrama, right? And I feel I'm at that stage. Although I'm doing some stage in the Grahastha and even Brahmacharya.
You reached Vanaprastha Ashrama.
In some ways. Most of my interests are there.
Okay.
Although my activities, still are on the others, and I've probably reached sannyasa as well.
Okay.
So from that standpoint, a lot of my early learnings were in the US. Fortunately or unfortunately, they were not in Silicon Valley. They were actually on the other coast, which is Washington DC. So in fact, for Silicon Valley, it was considered the hinterlands. What will they do? How will they do startups outside of Silicon Valley? This is the only place to do startups. So in a way, we took that as a challenge and said, why can't we build something so far away from Silicon Valley that we can demonstrate it can be done. So just like what I found in India when I came back, there were very few VCs, very few startups. I lived in Washington DC area.
Which year was this?
1992. I did my first startup.
1992. That's way back in the valley.
No, in
DC.
Washington
DC. Sorry,
Washington DC.
Okay.
So, I was doing a services based startup, as in I used to build software for the federal government. So I have done projects for FAA, I have done projects for DOJ. So these are the kinds of things that I used to work on. That was my first startup. Now, that may not be product related and all that, but it just turned out that I joined Hughes Network Systems, where we were building telecom products, and there within that we were doing something called packet based switching, and all that. Packet based switching is the fundamentals of voice over IP or IP, internet as we know it, and within that transmitting voice over IP is the product that I built next.
And the VoIP,
So that's the journey of product coming into, becoming part of my DNA. Although startup was always there in the DNA, now the product was the reason why I wanted to build startups. So when I did my second startup, we went through lots of ups and downs, gave me a lot of learning as an entrepreneur, even though I was a second-time entrepreneur, but more so as a person, as a human being. I think I learned a lot in terms of what is it that I should be doing, differently and fundamentally, so that I'm much more successful, much more amenable to success.
Was that into product or service? The second one?
That was product, voice over IP product. So we were building soft switches.
Okay, on the soft switches, okay.
Yeah. And so we took that technology and, so it was interesting. So the product was earlier focused on what we called as competitive local exchange carriers, as in new generation of telecom providers, or baby bells as we called them. So one time in 2000, all the baby bells kind of started having huge amounts of issues too, and they kind of just disappeared. So our entire thing about selling to a certain set of customers through the baby bells, that business model evaporated overnight.
Oh my God.
And therefore, using the same product, we offered a different solution. So the solution was to help those people that were using these subsea cables to run voice over IP, to run IP, now to also run voice over IP using our switches. So we would take the regular telephone calls, convert them into voice over IP. They will go under the sea all the way to the other country, and then another switch of ours will be sitting on that side, which will convert it back from voice over IP to regular telephone, and that way it will connect back to whatever. So imagine I'm calling my mother in India. I would call on a regular phone, but it would go into a Sprint's switch or AT&T switch, and then that will go on in the subsea cable. On the other side, it will change into a regular phone, and through VSNL at that time to PNT and DOT or BSNL or Airtel will get to my mother. That is the thing. So this same product, same technology, but it was solving a different problem. And that is what was fascinating for me, saying, it's okay to build these things, but you also have to find a way to make this relevant and useful. And that's something that we had to reach deep into our our resources to be able to come up with this interesting model. Because if we had not thought about this, we would have spent close to about $14 million and have nothing to show for it. So that is the kind of, and this I'm talking in 2000, 25 years ago. I had raised $14 million and I had built this product, and this is what I was doing. So that was my product journey. And then I said product is the way for India also to progress. So in fact, when I moved back to India after finishing my second startup, in India, I again felt that we need to do a startup quickly, because this is my third time doing a startup. Why should it be so much harder? Why don't I take a little bit of a leap? And I bought a company from Silicon Valley and brought that into Bangalore.
What was this into?
This is into the metro core Ethernet switching.
Okay.
So all the fiber was being laid by Reliance and Airtel and BSNL.
Which year was this?
2004, 2005.
Wow. Okay.
But that was not being used up as much. It needed these switches to be lighting these things up. So the technology I bought from Silicon Valley, highly funded company, $70 million of funding. They built it, but then, as I said, the CLEX disappeared, to whom they were trying to sell to. So they decided to shut down. Unlike my second startup, where I decided not to shut down, but pivot.
But to pivot, yes.
Yeah. So here I bought a company that refused to pivot, and I bought it from them and I applied it here.
So the IP then belonged to you from the Valley?
IP belonged to me, a whole bunch of product, hardware, everything that they had just stopped operations, everything came to us.
Okay.
And the ready-made markets for us was China and India.
So you're looking at Chinese market to export. Okay.
So we actually sold in China Telecom, China Netcom, and of course in Indian Army, Indian Railways bought our equipment. So we did a lot of interesting things. But what I also found was, although I was aspiring for building products in India, and that being the way for us to really not just build products and getting ahead of the innovation curve in India, but building products for the world. And that was my dream. And that is still my dream. So I started assuming that a lot of the things that I had taken for granted in the US existed in India. Unfortunately, none of that existed in India. So if I wanted to hire people, I would have to hire somebody from Wipro. I would have to hire somebody from Infosys. And those guys will say, "Sir, what should we work on?" I said, "Boss, there is no requirements document that I can give you, a contract that I can bring you from a customer and tell you, please work towards this. And this is your budget." A lot of these things we have to do it ourselves. We have to take a chance. And we have to build this ahead of time. This is what a product building is all about. You may ask, why were we still building products? Because the product that I got was a product that was built for the US markets. So 90-95% probably still was relevant to what we are trying to do. But there are standards, there are certification requirements in India, in China, that we had to continue to satisfy. Otherwise, we couldn't sell it here. So those technology requirements or standards compliance that we had to do completely, so that we could interoperate with other equipment in the telecom network. So we had to build this. So talent was not something that people were able to say, okay, let me do a product roadmap. This is what I'm going to build this year for this contract, that year for being able to go to this set of customers. They were not thinking that way. Product management, non-existent. VCs, non-existent. angel investors, some people who were putting in money, but they didn't understand what they were doing. Mentors, nobody was building products. So who is there to mentor these young startups? None of that existed. So basically my third startup, even though it was my third startup, but it was a disaster. It didn't work very well. So basically I had to.
Were you was there challenges even with finances? What you invested onto that?
Yeah, of course. I made no money. I lost a lot of money in that. But it was also an awakening for me to say, okay, you can't assume that you can take a lot of these things for granted. You have to kind of go back to the basic principles and ascertain everything once again. Every time you start, you go back to the basics.
Was the market not ready? You think what was the reason?
No, market was ready. Technology was available. 90-95% technology I already had. But, I needed to spend, for example, anywhere from 100K to 250K, depending on what products that we wanted to, or what features and functions I needed to complete. Those I had to complete anyway. So on an average, I used to spend anywhere from 300K to 350K per year. Now, that money had to come from my investors.
Correct.
But they are also saying, बस your product is ready. आपको और क्या चाहिए?
Correct.
इतना खरीद लिया है, अभी आपके पास है, बेचो. I said, for every contract that I have to fulfill, an RFP that I had to respond to, I have to do some additional things. They said, no, how can you have additional things? You can just have to sell whatever you have. So it was very difficult for people to understand that you are spending money in anticipation
that you want to
of
get
revenue.
Revenue, yes.
It is not that revenue opportunities were coming your way. You are hiring people, and almost within a month's time, they were billing, and the billing would bring the money back. So there was just a working capital issue as far as services is concerned. In product, you're actually putting a lot of money upfront and creating certain, some intellectual property, some defensible technologies, on that stuff. After which, there was some chance that you will succeed.
Correct.
There is no guarantee of success. So this is what, if you were to succeed, you could create an immense amount of valuations and immense, companies and so on and so forth. And that was the promise that I was going after. Because I knew, in my heart that we couldn't do it. Who do you think are the most successful entrepreneurs in the US? Indians.
Correct.
Of Indian, with Indian education, Indian cultures, mores, discipline, value system, and they are succeeding there. Same people, if they are in India, why shouldn't they succeed? And therefore, I was not blaming the people. I was blaming the fact that we didn't have an ecosystem that could help them become as successful as the people out there.
Amazing. So, was this journey that, like today you are a mentor, you have been mentoring and you have been participating in many forums and platforms in different sizes and capacities across different startups. I've been noticing many of them in the product spree, and you also produced some phenomenal mentees. Okay, so do you think was this a foundation for your mentorship of understanding what to do, what not to do, all of this culmination of these experiences brought to you to a gesture saying that, hey, you know what, I have just found a recipe that these are some of the things to identify to do, and these are some of the metrics to put it across, and these are something absolutely not to do. Was there some foundation? Do you think this laid a good foundation to you?
Yeah, there are very fundamental problems that a lot of entrepreneurs face. One set of problems is entrepreneur himself or herself. And the biggest problem that they face is called ego. Right?
Yeah.
They would say, okay, if my classmate has done so well, I should also do well. I should go ahead and make things happen, right? And so they just are trying to work from their worldview. and saying this is a fantastic technology, this should sell. And if the customer says, no, I don't want it, they'll say, this guy is an idiot. He doesn't understand what I am doing. So it's such a fantastic thing that I have brought to you and you don't understand. It is their ego. Instead of that, if they were to listen to the customer, the chances of them succeeding is so much higher. There are times when they will, want to go ahead and raise money because, oh, that guy was able to raise money, in the same thing. Why should I not also raise money? Was there any reason for the business for them to raise money at this point in time?
Maybe not.
Maybe not. But they chose to do this because of a reason that was generated from themselves, within themselves. No other reason. Right? Or they take up building a product of a sort that is completely unnecessary in the market. Yes, when they were sitting in Microsoft or Motorola or somewhere, sitting in that large organization, when they were building that little piece of technology, and it interconnected with everything else, it made sense to say, I am a good technologist. But once you become outside a large organization and you are trying to build a product, your technology skills is only one part of the story. Your ability to sense how it interconnects with everything else and be able to produce that little piece in that larger context is what should be asserted. If you don't do that, you obviously will fail.
Correct.
But a lot of times an entrepreneur will go by his gut feeling and say, this is what I think I should do. This technology is 10 times faster. This is 1/10 the cost of what is available today. And I can, have built it on a very scalable architecture. So why shouldn't it be? So, those guys have done, some old, structures, old language. My language is much better, utilizes the processors much more, effectively, uses the cloud better. And okay, those are not the reasons why a customer buys your product.
Correct. Those only matter a lot.
But that's what they are rationalizing for themselves. But the question that they don't answer is, who is your customer? You are not your own customer. They are your customers. I think you should do that. So that is the entrepreneur. And the organizations that they build also sometimes are completely driven by, a different sets of dynamics. And let's say, for example, you have gone out there based on your credentials, maybe your educational background. There's a lot of this discussion about IITs and IIM people having much easier, ways in raising money and all that.
You should say that.
So they raise it, and the VCs also, or the investors also say, hey, this guy is a smart guy, I think we should give him money. Give him or her money. And these guys have now been given the license to go build something without necessarily have spoken to a lot of customers. I'm just amazed as how many organizations are built to certain levels without a single conversation with a customer. They would have spent so much money so quickly, and they built something of great value potentially, but value to who?
It's all assumption.
It's all assumptions. Or they're too early, or they're too late. Now none of these signals are picked up by these guys because they are completely internally focused building some fantastic technology.
So you caution that a market study, a market data would be very relevant in shaping your assumption and gut feeling to also check the technology on the cards and understand things, formulate it, and then come up with a recipe saying that, hey, you know what, this is futuristic and this is offbeat. So all of those matters.
In fact, the lesser ego you have, the more signals you gather from the market. Everybody seems to be saying something of interest to you. Instead, if your ego is taking over, you are always pushing things back and not taking the signal. You're killing signals from the outside. So, today I was reading Deccan Herald, and there is a very interesting story of a drama, a house of drama, Nina Sam. 75 years it has been around. Now the interesting thing is they never raised any money from a charitable trust. So if they were anywhere at any point irrelevant, to wait for the next set of relevancy to be coming in, or the next set of ideas to come in, they have no way of surviving. So they basically had to completely understand what was going on all around them to be able to be relevant to the markets. If people are not wanting some kind of drama, some kind of play, they will shrink. They'll say, no, this is not the kind of drama that the audience wants. So we have to come up with a good set of drama that people would want to come and watch and pay for and all that. And they would then hit upon the right one within a very short period of time, and then again expand, because then now the relevancy has increased. And then they have continued to expand and shrink and whatever it took to always be relevant. And therefore, and also this thing about money, for me, if you bring in money too quickly into a story, it takes your feet off the ground. Absolutely. It doesn't take away, it takes away your ability to stay grounded in reality.
Absolutely.
So before you take any money, you have to be sure that you are ready to run rather than get your feet off the ground for unnecessary reasons. So anyway, what that I thought was a very interesting, it is not a startup, but it behaved like a very successful startup. It's been around for 75 years. It has been serving its audiences. It has a name, brand recognition. People like Girish Karnat and various others have gone there, been there, part of that journey. So I think, we have to start, bringing that humility, that deep understanding, that, wanting to be in consonance with the markets is a huge thing. That for me is a big thing. So to answer your larger question, these are the fundamental, areas in which a lot of our fantastically talented entrepreneurs tend to fail.
Brilliant.
And I find it very, very sad, to see that they're making the most fundamental mistakes. I'm not trying to say, okay, no, you should have gone after, this technology versus that technology. You picked the wrong technology. I don't get into any of those because I don't know enough about a lot of these things. But at the same time, I feel that problem would have been solved by the entrepreneur had they taken themselves off of, optimizing the startup, the vision of the startup to themselves and to their understanding of what it should happen, which was also very, very closed understanding, because they're not listening. So I spend a lot of time on those kinds of things and what makes sense for them to take up at what times of their lives and so on and so forth. So that's where most of my mentoring is. So all the way from people not understanding how to become entrepreneurs, to becoming entrepreneurs but making some silly mistakes, from making silly mistakes to not taking on enough of a large problem. Why are they taking a small problem, only generating, say, a couple of $1 million? They can do so much more. These are brilliant set of kids. Why are they holding themselves back? These are all my opportunities for mentoring.
Brilliant. Pretty brilliant, Ravi. I'll take this. NASSCOM Product Conclave. You are mentor partner to programs like these, which are pretty brilliant. And also that, through these programs like NASSCOM Product Conclave, Bangalore had an image of IT capital, and still it has. You're also incremental in changing into the shape of a startup capital. I'm sure you just gave me a good brief about how entrepreneurs look up to and what are things essentially to have and not to have, and you gave me a good understanding. From the NASSCOM Startup Conclave to NASSCOM Product Conclave to the making it a startup capital, you would have come across some very promising startups. Some of them have been, you felt like, some of them have been, hey, this startup is going to be very successful because of whatever they're building, and some of them are like, hey, this is mediocre, but it would have become vice versa. I have seen many startups, and I've also witnessed a couple of them, and you would have witnessed more than me, stating that, there is a recipe for both. I mean, you told me about customer understanding, egos, and all of these profiling. But what does it take for entrepreneurs predominantly to stick on to that, have a belief in that, and even if it is mediocre, scale it all along and make it big? Even because there may be the same idea may be amongst 10 of them, 15 of them building it, but only one tend to be successful. And the other side, it is pretty unique, but it doesn't sound successful and they're struggling hard. Do you think is the market not ready to sometimes accept the new revolution and go behind only the legacy stuff, or is it that again the way entrepreneurs actually design the whole course?
Yeah, see, NASSCOM Product Conclave was again an aspirational thing, perhaps very early on for us to take on. Because NASSCOM until then had done a lot of things on the services side and done a phenomenal job. For them, this was a new journey. And so my friend Sharad Sharma, myself, a few others, we still keep in touch. We are all doing some wonderful work in different spaces. But for us, it was almost like a evangelistic, work. We were trying to evangelize products into the ecosystem here. And interestingly, even though we had a few companies that were building kind of a product in India, and some larger companies were building product for some other companies, whole products, not just slices of products like the SIs did, but some of these companies, they were there. But interestingly, we had no single role model that we could demonstrate to India and say, see, look at this guy. He has built a product. And this is what it takes to build products. So interestingly, we had to go seek out a role model from outside of India. And we were fortunate to get Guy Kawasaki there. And Guy came all the way from US, from Silicon Valley, and so he told India how to build products in a way. At least his journey of how he has been working with startups, working with companies, and so on and so forth. Fast forward to today, 25 years, we have our own role models all across the ecosystem, and so on and so forth.
We have grown a long way.
We have come a very, very long ways, very, very quickly, I should say. And a lot of that goes to people who have actually taken on this charge and done something well. Now, before I answer your specific question, I think along the way, obviously, we have not created all winners, which never is the story with the startups. But I feel that every entrepreneur who has taken the journey seriously and really helped do a good startup, if they succeed, fantastic, we have a role model. If they don't succeed, it's okay, we still have a role model, because this person will tell you what not to do, what really did not work out for them. Was it the market? Was it the technology? Was it the dynamics within co-founders, or the way they hired improperly, the fact that they may have raised money sooner, or they have gone out into foreign markets sooner than they should have, whatever. All of these are very relevant things. So bringing that thing back into the ecosystem is also very helpful. So for me, as an ecosystem, from an ecosystem perspective, successes are as important as failures. In fact, failures are even more important, because upon the failures we can build something. Upon successes, we don't know exactly why we succeeded. There is never a very clear understanding. Sometimes it is all the good decisions that you have made. Sometimes there's also a lot of luck. So how do you characterize luck for somebody else to take and run with? But in a failure, it just boils down to all the decisions, all the things that you have done. which have not worked out. So at least you know what to eliminate. So you can build something on top of that. So I think in a way, our early successes came not because we built fantastic technology products for the Indian market or global markets. It came primarily because you were able to build some fantastic companies that were focused on the Indian markets.
Okay.
A lot of B2C companies that have done so well, most of the unicorns today are all B2C companies.
Correct.
Or D2C. And this is how we have built, because you are here in the ecosystem is evolving, you understood it, you know how to make this happen. But sometimes when you want to build a B2B company, India is not ready for buying that kind of products from large companies, are not ready to buy from you, or companies are not ready to buy from you. Consumers may be ready to buy from startups. Companies are not ready yet. Therefore, you feel that selling B2B in India may not be that easy and quick. But the corporations, say in the US, is so much more amenable to buying from startups. They are much more amenable, saying, okay, yeah, we'll give you a chance, we'll give you a small POC, let's get started, $50,000. Let's start with that. You deliver, okay, then now we'll give you 200,000, and so on and so forth. They are open to doing all those things, which we are beginning to do a lot of work in that side also in India, where corporations are beginning to say, yes, I'm also willing to buy from startups. Because for us, see, it is not just startups selling to somebody. They have to sell to some, it is to customers that will buy from them. The customers are not even open to the idea of buying from a startup. I think you have a fundamental issue. The startup is the corporation is buying from a startup so that they can expand their portfolio of products. They can or fill the holes in the portfolio of products that they have, or enhance their products to take on certain elements that these products bring, whatever. Or they may just want to, do something in collaboration with them, because let's say there's a medtech company, and let's say Medtronics is somebody that doesn't have the product in that space, and they want to sell through Medtronics. Suddenly all the hospitals, all the other, customers of theirs become customers of the startup if Medtronics were happy to become a channel partner. So all of these things, is very well understood, matured in, say, the US markets. So a lot of the B2B market companies that are building good products sitting in Bangalore, sitting in India, do not find a ready-made, customer set here in India yet. Some, but not as much. So they cannot realize their fullest potential sitting in India, in the Indian market. They have to sell to the global markets to make that happen. Things are beginning to change, but it continues to be the case, will be for the next, few years.
So you say that for the entrepreneurs, it's all about, before I get there, I have a question add on to this, because my question was to you that what makes the entrepreneurs difference, because it is like, unique product failing and mediocre product succeeding. I just got a glimpse of what you're trying to say. But a new question popped out to me when I heard your conversation. Do you think India is not ready to make unicorns in the B2B space? Because likewise, talking to me, I'm also instantly realizing, yes, majority of the brands today in India which are unicorns are purely B2C. And now some of them have been D2C market also currently on the consumer base, on many other segments. Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to recall the names in which can be B2B companies, but I'm getting all B2C companies. Only a few of them I'm just trying to strike my brain on the B2B. What makes India get ready there? Because let's say a Microsoft Corporation or an Apple or an Amazon or anything global brands today, they are globally unicorns, and I see that they have come from a different countries, could be Zoom, could be anything. We have something called Voodoo picking up and many things coming from different spaces. But what should India follow to build a global unicorn on a B2B grounds? Because I am not getting as big as some bigger names, okay, on the global unicorns for India to have a B2B potential, because these B2B brands can actually push the country, the ecosystem, the economy to whatnot to a very large acceleration when compared to that of B2C. Because B2C in India, probably the consumption is more because of our population. So what does it take for B2B for India to produce?
Yeah, again, it's a organic journey. We can't make this happen overnight. It takes 9 months to make a baby, right? So it will follow its
But
own.
are we heading in that direction?
Yeah, we definitely are. So obviously there are more successful B2B companies than the year before, and there will be more of them later on. A lot of these companies find their initial, good traction outside of India before they get, inside India. So,
Is that because, sorry to cut you, but is that because the Indian business adaptation to tech is lesser, or you think the adaptation is other side it's more? Is that the reason also?
Tech is one thing, but more so buying from startups is not something that has sunk in very well. So there are very few Indian organizations that are embracing startups and working with them, right? So currently we have TVS doing something, Tata is doing something, larger guys are doing it. And I'm even talking to CII, for example, and saying, can we expand this whole notion of working with startups, amongst you, all of you? Because you have to work with them. It's not just, you're not doing charity. The technologies around us are changing so rapidly that if you are not getting these technologies into yourselves, say take AI for example. There's a huge hype around that. A lot of people are saying, okay, I have a lot of data, I can train my models, I can do certain things. Why are you not doing it? Startups on the other side are starved of data. They don't know how to do what the right things are. You have all the data, but you're not doing what you're supposed to do. And if you don't do this, the chances that you will you will continue to thrive in this market is limited. You're going to be out of business very soon. You're saying that to a TVS and all that looks ludicrous, but it's true that if you don't do certain things in this fashion, you are going to be losing your place in the market. The market share you're going to lose very, very rapidly because things are changing. Business models are changing, the pricings are changing, distribution models are changing because of technology being, completely disrupting this again and again and again. So, corporations which have are like huge, big tankers, they can't make changes in direction very, very quickly. They need some of these little boats to quickly make these changes and find the right markets to take their products into and solve the problems before the large ones will also turn that way. So to work with these guys is very important. So corporations being open to the idea of working with startups is beginning to happen, thankfully. Has it happened in a large scale basis? Not yet. Therefore, can you compare the Indian markets to say a US market? Far from that. But B2B market companies can still make maybe a couple of $1 million in the Indian markets today. But if they really want to unlock the fullest potential, which could be $100 million, in that same period of time, that will be in the US market. Why? Because their customers, their channel partners exist in a much larger way in the US markets rather than Indian markets today. So, if I were to go back, say 5 years, 10 years, the same B2B company would have got zero revenue from Indian markets to begin with. It was like a stillborn. You would have not been able to take off. Even though you had some great technology, you're looking on the net and saying, oh, my competitor in the US has the same product. In fact, it's a slightly inferior product, but they have already reached $5 million. These guys are struggling to get their first order. because it takes a little bit of money to go sell. Selling is not the forte of a lot of our Indian founders. They are technology, heavy duty technology guys. They don't know how to, sell to people and all that. They say that's all for somebody else to do. But today in the startup case, they have to be the seller too. So that's what they struggle with a lot. So I think to get that $2 million is not a bad thing. But having got that validation, having some use cases, okay, for this kind of a situation in a corporate environment, if I am able to provide this kind of a solution, this is the use case. The same use case could be a starting point for selling into a US market as well.
Now that you took up a point that maybe some startups or some Indian entrepreneurs face on the selling part of it, right? You have been mentoring a lot of them. Now, what does your mentoring metrics involve? Does it involve a problem solving? What do you rejoice as a person? Like when you mentor a startup, is it like more of a strategy oriented, operations oriented, sales oriented? Every startup will have a different dynamics. Every startup will have different use cases according in principle to the challenges, and at the end of the day, they will have to thrive to the same success. But from where they start, that point is much different, because I'm sure you will not get the same use case, same startup every time. You will have a different challenges all through. So when you're mentoring, normally, where do you think that we have emphasized more to make a startup thrive and fly high?
Well, I go back to the basic principles of building a successful startup and being a successful founder, a successful entrepreneur. And I'm always optimizing to that. If I'm able to help the founder be a successful founder, and if I'm able to help the startup as an organization to be much more successful, those are the things I optimize to. What the market is, who the customers are, and what product have you built for that particular market. Those are less relevant for me. If you're doing the right, if you're following the right principles, it's an interesting thing. There's a book by Ray Dalio, right? He talks about principles. So a principle is, these principles don't change. These things are continue to stay as, truth, no matter what you do. And therefore, based on those principles, if you are able to build successful companies, then I think you're doing something right. So things like I talked to you about, are you speaking to enough customers? Are you pricing it properly? Are you able to look at the market in a much more objective way, nothing subjective? Are you able to build it much more based on the realities of the startup rather than your aspirations, your ambitions? So a lot of these things are continually the things that people don't optimize to, or they want to optimize to it, but they will always make an exception here and there and say, let me one time not do this, let me try to make this happen. Say, for example, in the case of getting their, first customer, a lot of times people will say, I will give it to them free. Let me just get this order. And therefore, they lose an opportunity to really get some good feedback from the customer. Because now you have sold it based on a completely different set of parameters. And people are using it. So the next customer that you go to and say, now we were not going to sell it to you free, I'll give it to you at a price. They'll say, no, how can that happen? You've given that person free, you should give me free too, right? So you're always trying to say, okay, let me just do this or give a discount or make a change so that I can get this order. But the question is, do you want to make this change? Because if this change only applies to this customer alone, then you have basically taken away your opportunity to make that change for at an expense of your growth. If the same feature that you were building for this particular customer was relevant to 100 other customers, 1,000 other customers, making that change is a definite yes. But are you evaluating that enough? So if you take a very short-term view, obviously you are going to succeed, not succeed, right? So those are some of the things. So a lot of times I'm asking questions, okay, did you make that decision to put in that feature which will take you easily 3-man months, 30-man months of work? Do you really want to do that? What are the things that you have brought in to evaluate whether that's the right decision or not? So I'm challenging their assumptions, they're challenging their thinking. And that reveals the answers to them. Right? A lot of times people don't challenge founders. And a lot of times the founders also create a comfort zone around them. Who's on the board? Oh, nobody, me and my wife.
So nobody to question them.
Nobody to question you. Or they will bring their CA to become part of the board. Say, okay, what does the CA bring to you this thing? A CA seems to be your advisor for everything. What's the point? So these kinds of, so they are not creating an environment to be challenged. And challenged not in a bad way. Challenged to continually keep them true to the principles that they started working on. If they are not keeping true, they are creating one little exception. Suddenly, their entire organization is full of exceptions. There's no norm. Everything is an exception, right? So then obviously they're bound to fail, because they are always kind of going away from what they thought was important for them to build, what are the principles on which they're going to operate their company. So let's say, for example, you are in a major crunch and you are wanting to hire somebody for that role and you don't find the right person. Then you say, what, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to take this person because at least they have some, rudimentary stuff that I really am looking for. Now that doesn't serve the purpose of building a good organization. You're not held yourself to the best metrics that you can. Or worse still, a lot of founders will find people that are less smarter than them, less capable than them. They're not bringing in people who will actually argue back, challenge you internally, saying, why should I do that? I don't think we should do that. They are not willing to have a debate and win the debate, or learn from the debate and say, what you got it right. They're not building the organization to be strengthened further and further. They're building it so that they can keep control of the organization, right? So a lot of these issues are fundamental issues.
So you see majority of them amongst the fundamentals?
Pretty much. People say, startups fail and stuff like that. Traditionally 75% will fail, 25% will move to the next level. But I'm thinking a lot of these companies fail primarily because of fundamental issues.
Understood. That was a very interesting viewpoint. It is this viewpoint is like known to many, but not put in practice. That's what I feel. It's not something like, hey, you know what? You gave me a piece of thing which many doesn't know. Probably we tend to forget, and we also tend to not to practice this, which is probably a clinch. Yeah, I hear you. That's right. Mm-hmm. Now, leading to T-Hub to become world's one of the most happening innovation campuses, which you have built all along. There are many of them who have built, okay, but T-Hub is off the box, and it has actually made a name like one of the largest in the world. Innovation campuses required. Okay, it is not just some infra, because it takes good amount of vision and architecture. How did you able to envisage such kind of a massive body to be functioning at that scale. So what made you do that, and where is it going now?
Yeah. See, I think a lot of this thinking and visioning and bringing in those resources are all done by the minister at that time, KTR, and also the principal secretary there. So it's one thing for us to, I mean, that aspiration is around, now everywhere, and people say, yeah, we should be doing the same thing. But they were actually able to pull this together.
Okay, that's interesting. So you were giving a credit to even ministers who have been involved in this. Great.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it took a lot of guts to think so big.
So they were visionaries, absolutely.
Exactly. No, definitely. So all the way from, wanting to make this happen quickly, wanting to be involved deeply
Ground up.
inside this, right? So in fact, when I was visiting my Hyderabad, and I was at Microsoft at that time, and I had gone there for a different purpose. The minister was also at that thing. And then when he found out that I was at Microsoft and I was the one who had built Microsoft Ventures across the world, he said, Ravi, please, I know you have to come and see T-Hub. At that time, T-Hub already existed, and the first CEO was operating the T-Hub at that time. So, I was catching a flight very close to that time. So I said, sir, not now. I'll come one more time and we will do this. He said, no. I can take you in my car and I can show you this. So this is the kind of commitment that he was putting in to making this happen. So I think I should give credit where it is due. Now that being said, what happens within that building, what happens with the people, what are the areas in which they wanted to build, that is something that a lot of us leaders have played a role in. So obviously, not just creating fantastic supply of great startups, which is what typically all incubators, accelerators do, to actually creating incubator accelerators for the corporate side too. That you need to be incubating, what is the next set of products, services that you're going to offer your customer. You need to incubate this yourself and quickly work with your own internal teams or startups, open innovation opportunities. So creating demand is another thing that was then. So this was the distinctive factor. So while there was supply that was everybody was working on, I also focused a lot on the demand side, to making sure the GCCs within Hyderabad were open to working with startups. Large companies in Hyderabad like the GVKs and the various Reddy Labs, Dr. Reddy's and all that, they were all willing to do. So a lot of this happened during my tenure, and thanks to that, now you're beginning to see more and more startups wanting to take on this journey within this thing, and certain startups coming from outside of Hyderabad into Hyderabad saying, demand is here, I want to be here, right? And the third piece, other than supply and demand, the third piece was there was a fundamental set of activities that were built to take the ecosystem to the next level, as in capacity building. More angels in the ecosystem, more VCs in the ecosystem, more mentors in the ecosystem, more customers in the ecosystem, policy creations in the ecosystem. All of this we were doing. And then, I even created something called T Fund and all that. Now, all this was done on the platform of these two people that were there behind the scenes making it happen. So I can not take, the credit away from all the people who played a role. But I was at the right place at the right time to bringing all these people together. So that we were able to accomplish a whole lot of things. Obviously, this the next new building was also in progress. Of course, it was also not going as fast. Government funding is always ups and downs and all that. So a lot of this we worked on to make things that are unlocked and so on and so forth. And unfortunately, the building got completed after I finished my tenure.
Understood.
But nevertheless, one of the things that I could say is when we showed that the previous version was working well, and there was something that we could scale very easily, then the kind of alignment that we got amongst all the stakeholders and money being brought in from the government to complete the rest of it was so much more clear. Otherwise, they had a project plan, so on and so forth, but they would also find reasons to funnel the money somewhere else to some other project, because they couldn't see exactly how this would help tell a bigger story. Once the bigger story clarity was in place, everything started coming together. And so I think now it is the biggest innovation campus in the world.
Yes.
Lots of things that are happening there are now being emulated, not just in India, but across the world. So yeah, I mean, I'm thankful that I was there at the right place at the right time, and a lot of good people that were around me that made me do this, take on this thing in the first place, and also support me while I was building this up, all the way from the board to several other people. Of course, I had my equal share of naysayers and people who wanted to bring things down and all that. But nevertheless, these people were able to provide the support when we are coming with all these things. The other interesting thing that happened during my CEO of T-Hub was also the Chief Innovation Officer for the state. So this was a purely governmental role. At least T-Hub was quasi-governmental role. This was a purely governmental role. As in, I had to help rural entrepreneurs, student entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs, grassroots entrepreneurs. Oh, I mean, I had some phenomenal experience. None of this I was exposed to. There I was building, offices in Beijing and Shanghai and, London, Paris, Berlin, Tel Aviv, Seattle in the Microsoft context. And suddenly I'm going to Nizamabad, going to Warangal, and working on several things there. So that was also very, very, challenging and interesting. And to make it all, extremely challenging, and which is where an entrepreneur usually thrives, is that we had COVID. All of this happened all at the same time.
I was about to come to the question. Yeah.
So here I am sitting in Bangalore, and interestingly, a lot of people think that I moved to Hyderabad. I didn't move to Hyderabad. I was always residing in Bangalore, and I was commuting to Hyderabad, and that was one of the requests that I had for the board, saying I won't move to Hyderabad. If you really want me, I will have to operate from Bangalore.
I think there are tons of people, directly, indirectly, who have made a difference through this. I have met a lot of people who have made difference themselves through T-Hub, and the tenure in which you are the state's innovation head as a CIO. I think Telangana had its own share of building some good amount of tech journey in this country. That was very, very interesting times. I actually wanted to start the Microsoft Ventures, but I wanted to come to the later because I know T-Hub was more thriving for me. What's the story with Microsoft Ventures? What made you give birth to that kind of a program, which is globally acclaimed, globally admired, and again, that is also bringing phenomenal differences among women entrepreneurs and many programs what Microsoft is doing. What is it all about Microsoft Ventures?
See, again, it was a time when Microsoft had shut itself off from the rest of the world and saying that they had the ability to build all products that Microsoft could ever want to build. They will never look to the outside of Microsoft to doing this. So they were extremely arrogant from a technology standpoint. They said we have hundreds of IITians, for example, in the GCC here, in Hyderabad or Bangalore. Why would we need any help from any startup of any kind? We can do everything internally. So there was that arrogance. Over and above the arrogance that was already there, that was saying no innovation can come outside of Microsoft. We are on top of everything. Although they had missed the web, the Netscape and all that, and then they caught up. They missed the mobile, this thing, then they caught up. Right? That arrogance was already there. Now on top of that, there was another arrogance that saying we will not do this. So in a way, when I joined, I was going back to a corporate job after 15 years. I had worked for IBM in 2000, something like that, before I started my second startup. So suddenly I'm going back to a corporate job. And the only reason I did that was because I had the ability to have one foot in startup world and one foot inside the corporation. And this was the beginnings of corporate innovation. As in, how does a corporation called Microsoft become much more open to the idea of working with innovators outside? And that was the journey that I wanted to be a part of. See, the early days was all about accelerators. They wanted to create all these different accelerators. 3 accelerators started off in Beijing, Tel Aviv, and Bangalore. And the primary reason they said this was to push a lot of Azure consumption, because startups are tomorrow's large companies. So let this startups be built on Azure and they will take it up. And that was the fundamental premise of starting these accelerators. Accelerators became part of Microsoft Ventures. Then Microsoft Ventures hived off M12, which is Microsoft's CVC, and Microsoft for Startups. So I worked primarily on getting the Microsoft for Startups across the world. And we added a lot more offices after the first 3. But it was a journey because I had to fight on both sides. The VCs and startups really said, what do we need Microsoft for? It's a company that has been written off. Google is the new thing. AWS is building some fantastic cloud thing. We should be, banking on that. So VCs did not care too much about all these things. Startups were building on Linux. If they needed to do something else, they would have built it on AWS. So they're perfectly fine. They were happy without the Microsoft being in the picture. And similarly, on the Microsoft side, they said, what, we can figure out every single product that needs to be built ourselves. We'll just do it. And that's what they did. But somehow, one of my colleagues, an Israeli guy, he was able to go convince, not even an Israeli guy. The Israeli guy came later. An Indian, Canadian maybe, of Indian origin. He convinced the Steve Ballmer's management team that we should set aside some money and start doing this. Kind of created that little
vacuum
to start having these conversations with the VC position. And then within a few months, thankfully, we got better coverage, as in Satya took over. And then I can say things just began to open up a lot more. He was open to the idea of what we were doing, plus everything else that he did, phenomenally helped us. So in a way, I was doing corporate innovation for Microsoft. I was trying to change the culture within Microsoft to work with startups, and for startups to be open to the idea of working with Microsoft. VCs, I can still remember. Satya's, we were the go-to guys for everything startup, right? So we got a message from Satya's office saying, I'm going to be in the Bay Area. Can you set up some VC meetings? Oh, it was so hard setting them up. I said, why should we meet with the CEO of Microsoft?
What is the purpose?
What's the purpose?
Yeah.
But that was, I would say, 2016 or some 15, 16, that time frame. And things have changed phenomenally since then. So that happened in a way that really helped do a lot of wonderful things for Microsoft. But outside of that, I think it was also a trailblazing thing at that time. Microsoft was probably the first one in Bangalore. First company in Bangalore, large company in Bangalore that had a program of this kind. Then NetApp, Cisco, a lot of them came about. But I think we suddenly brought the market closer to the startups a lot more. Perhaps it was the team that I built. Perhaps it was the mentors that I was able to assemble. Perhaps something changed fundamentally in Bangalore at that point in time. Because while they were startups and they were VCs, but the boom did not take place until the corporations became very much active in this thing. So, fundamental shift, I think. And I mean, see, I'm also perhaps biased because I am going by what I see. But, in the early days, it was TIE. Because TIE brought all these things. Then NASSCOM with their product conclave brought the product side of things. We even, brought in VCs, TIE from all across the world to come into Bangalore. So that was the beginnings of the product thing. Then the corporate thing happened. Then, Flipkart raising a lot of money and then, all that happened. Although it was B2C, suddenly startups started becoming much more sexy, right? And then, so those were, I think, the phases of growth that I've seen in Bangalore. So the second phase was about corporate, being a very important element of an ecosystem. If they were there, goes back to my demand side of things. Suddenly, a lot of things happen much better. So that was an interesting journey, and we built something phenomenal. It helped Microsoft as much as it helped all the ecosystems, wherever they were placed. And then I think, they shifted the direction of Microsoft for startups. It has gone all over the place now. It is not the same thing that we had at that place. But perhaps, they are serving a very different need at this point in time, Microsoft for startups. But when we were there, we were, in the most challenging environment that we were trying to solve this problem in. And that's what the co-founders of Microsoft Ventures thrive in, right? And we all like challenges. And we built something phenomenal to overcome those challenges. And that's how Microsoft, Ventures, Microsoft for Startups was established.
Did you envisage that day that Microsoft Ventures will be such kind of a massive program what it is today? Were you able to foresee that then?
Well, it's not a big program anymore. It used to be. It's a different version of it altogether. Perhaps even a smaller version of it. But it played a role in the Microsoft journey and the journey of the ecosystems that we were in a big way during those times. All the way from, I would say, 2013 to perhaps up to 2021 or so. So about 8 years it played its role in that fashion. After which it kind of became too many other things for too many people. It was trying to take care of too many other interests of Microsoft. So we had taken away the decision making into our hands by being this middleman. But as the success began to happen, the decision making went back inside of Microsoft and things changed.
Taking the cue from your previous question on the T-Hub, COVID, when COVID struck, everything went into a digital realm. For accelerators like T-Hub, during the COVID, when you are actually trying to operate, what was those elements that remote first model, okay, actually made programs more efficient than they used to be in the digital realm during COVID? How did you operate these accelerators? How did you make it function? COVID was probably a devil that nobody knew, and it rather taught many of us to innovate new things. But how that impacted on your programs?
Well, of course, a lot of these startups were very, very young that we were working with. They were all sitting in our space. So for them, meeting other people, learning from other people was an integral part of their entrepreneurial journey. To suddenly sit at home and do whatever they needed to completely took away from what I believed in, that you should be interacting with customers, you should be interacting with other people, you should have mentors challenging your idea. None of this was happening because people were just sitting in their homes coding. And the question was, what are you coding for? Who are you coding for? So I think we definitely took a little bit of a hit based on that. Even T-Hub itself, all our revenues evaporated. Because see, T-Hub is, besides being one of the largest innovation campus and all that wonderful stuff, is also the only organization that I know that is fully self-sustaining at the moment. So they have revenues to sustain their operations.
They're also government backed.
No. So the government has provided the space, no doubt.
Correct.
From that standpoint, it is government backed. But from a month-to-month basis,
Operationally not.
nothing. Now, none of the OPEX comes from outside.
So it's all the model which T-Hub operates.
Outside as in outside from the government.
Understood, yes.
So yeah, so it's a self-sustaining model. So yeah, so our revenues vanished. So we had people on our payrolls, we had plans that we had set up. All of this was just taking a major hit. And then we were always saying, oh, incubators do not have a business model, they will die very soon. Accelerators do not have a business model. But we were trying to make our way to something where we were wanted to show the world that, see, we are still self-sustaining despite all this. And that took a hit because now we were not self-sustaining anymore. Could not be. So yeah, so I think we went through a lot of changes that way. So, and then of course corporations who were saying, oh yes, we should work with startups, suddenly saying, boss, we're not taking any decisions because we don't know where the hell this economy is going to go, where our markets are going. So they didn't want to do any corporate innovation. So they became less connected with the ecosystem. So a lot of challenges that we faced, but we came out of it. And we are where we are today, and it's a very thriving ecosystem that we have created in Hyderabad. One of the things that I keep making fun of my co-CEOs or my CEOs, predecessors and successors, is that the first one came from Bangalore, I came from Bangalore, third one came from Bangalore, now first and third live in Bangalore, the fourth finally has come from Hyderabad.
Okay.
So now there is an ecosystem that can produce leaders for an organization such as this.
Brilliant. With Startup Genome, we are now measuring the entire ecosystems. What's a leading indicator you look for that signals whether a city or a region is on track to become a global startup hub kind of things with Startup Genome? How are you looking into it?
Yeah. So Startup Genome is a very interesting organization. multiple facets to it. One of the facets is where we rank ecosystems. Now, this is a new phenomenon. Most people are focused on how to build great startups, how to build great incubators for startups, accelerator for startups, how do I, put a VC fund together, and so on and so forth. So everybody is looking at different elements of what I would call an ecosystem. But this organization has taken a much more holistic view and said, how do we create an ecosystem? As in startups, investors, academia, research organizations, government, and of course corporations. All of this put together, how do we make this into a thriving ecosystem? Now there are some 45 different parameters based on which you actually create a value for an ecosystem. One of them is the very measurable aspect of it is the what we call as the ecosystem value. How much money has it been able to absorb? How much has it been able to release? Right? Liquidity. So, obviously, the more money you bring in, obviously, it's a larger ecosystem, building some phenomenal startups because investors are attracted to, good fundamental business models, and that's what that one is. And then not only do they move up the value chain, but they are able to release the money back to the investors and to the employees, who then become the next set of founders, and so on and so forth. So that's the process. That is the hard number-driven kind of set of parameters. There are softer parameters, as in the founders, what kind of educational backgrounds are they coming from? What kind of startup background are they coming from? What kind of global connectedness are they coming from? How much do they understand the global markets? All of this comes from the softer set of assessment that we do, which is through interviews. So all of this put together creates an ecosystem value, and that's what provides the ranking for us. And now, while several people have attempted to do the ranking over the last few years, now the one that people gravitate to is Startup Genome, because they say this is the ranking that we want to go by. So if you're in the top, say 20, 30 or whatever, obviously you get a lot more attention, because this is also one of those things that you can go talk about, right? So for example, I have gone to various different forums, one of them being the World Economic Forum, along with the Minister of Telangana and the Principal Secretary. So one of the things we touted was a thriving ecosystem, and so ranking obviously makes a lot of difference. Why? Because there is innovation happening, great talent up there, and if you were to put your investments into that city or to that state, obviously the chances of it, being accretive to your larger organization is so much higher. So Startup Genome's ranking matter for cities and states and countries now. And that's what has now created an interesting dynamic amongst people to aspire to become better and better in their ranking year on year. So that is one, it's a very holistic view. Obviously, what that also brings about is people to take bring in a thought process and saying, well, what can I do better? Do I have to change my policy? Do I have to bring in more money? Do I have to create a certain sort of capacity building programs that will generate more angel investors in my ecosystem? What do I have to do? And that's where we provide advisory. So this is the second element of it. Besides the ranking part, the second element is advisory on what is it that you can do better to. Obviously, you can do well on so many things. But if you were to pick only, say, 2-3 things, what will you do well on? So that's what we are doing. And the third one that I do a lot of work in is on the side of building much more active approaches to building these ecosystems to the next level. So be it, in Bangalore's case, for example, there is a hypergrowth program where we take those companies that are
Correct.
building some fundamentally good thing, the best, ecosystem, B2B startups in this ecosystem that could become something much more had they just access to the right markets, not make some silly mistakes, get their PMF right, product market fit right, and all that stuff. We work with them. An Indian PMF is not the same as US PMF. So we have to create a US PMF for them. All of that work we do through this hypergrowth program. Similarly, the hypergrowth program we apply to the corporates. Not very different from what I did at Microsoft or T-Hub, but we do this across ecosystems. And that's what I'm doing now in the hypergrowth program, where we take active interest in building ecosystems along with the governments and along with set of private investors and so on and so forth. So very interesting set of dynamics that we are doing. So, sometimes I feel, it was one thing if I just say I took up a job in IBM and I could have spent 30 years, 35 years of my career in one place because I had enough and more things to do there. But what I'm thankful for is that every step of my way, from being an individual entrepreneur with, of course, my co-founders and so on and so forth, to becoming an investor, to become a corporate innovation, builder at Microsoft, to become an ecosystem builder at T-Hub, to now an advisor to governments. I wouldn't have asked for anything better because every step of the way I am doing something that is more impactful, but also it's providing me an opportunity to learn more. And as I learn, I feel much more capable of doing even bigger work, in the future. So every step of the way, I have taken on some very, very, I would say, crazy challenges.
Yes, indeed.
And my wife has never been happy about that. She's just thinking, Arey, why don't you just take something and just settle down? Because her father was a professor.
Okay.
So interestingly, from knowing us professors very well, set up life, to this guy who is not only changing companies, but changing companies that are, different startups altogether, his own companies. It's been a very uncertain
Extremes.
journey for
Extremes.
extreme. So yeah, I think, but as I say, I've been very fortunate in that I have had several people who have been my mentors and my supporters, and given me a chance to go do something, as stupid it looked from the face of it, but actually to make this something interesting and noble that ultimately came out of it.
So Ravi, you have been mentioning about hypergrowth. So hypergrowth is Karnataka you aim Karnataka and Bangalore to be one of the good global top 10 through hypergrowth, to put companies into that list. I think there are ecosystems like TIE also who is supporting hypergrowth. So how I would want to know more how companies can participate in hypergrowth, and also to know more about your role in TIE and how you are actually trying to streamline many things and bring in the value through this.
Yeah. So as I described earlier, hypergrowth looks at both the startups, the best startups, how do they become global category leaders. So there's a set of interventions that we bring to the table. Because these companies are already, fairly advanced, we're not looking to give them mentoring or gyan and stuff like that. We're actually taking the most important thing that any company should care about, which is revenue. How do you grow their revenues 10 times, 100 times? That's all we focus on. In the process of making the revenues better, do we get better products? Do we get better pricing? Do we help change the technology? Do we bring in a better, do we upskill their management team? All that stuff becomes a means to the end. The end is revenue. So that's what hypergrowth is, to increase your revenue and making you into a global category leader. We don't see enough of that coming out of the startup ecosystems that are, sub 15th rank. Bangalore is today 21st rank. So when I started working on this with Startup Genome, we built programs in Quebec, in Tokyo, in Abu Dhabi, in Seoul, after which we built the Bangalore program. So basically what we are doing with Hypergrowth is to work with the VCs that have invested in Bangalore companies that see that there is immense potential for these companies, but they don't know how to play the role of taking them there, the VCs. So founders are brilliant, the product is brilliant, the market opportunity is fantastic, but these guys may not, get to that level of success that a equivalent company in the US would. So how do we make them equivalent to the companies that are sitting in the US with similar caliber founders, similar caliber products, similar caliber market opportunity? So that's what we're trying to solve for.
What are the kind of companies who can get listed into Hypergrowth? Products and services both?
No, products, and that too B2B.
Not services.
No services. Because that story has been built from India. We don't need to do this again. This piece has not been built in India yet. There's opportunities for the next, say, 5-7 years, after which India will have a gush of companies becoming product category leaders, I'm very sure. But we are trying to accelerate that gap and closing it quicker than what would have happened organically. That's what I'm doing. I'm working with about 30 companies, 30 VCs. We have got a lot of referrals from them because VCs see us as, partners with them, because we are also pushing in the same direction as they would like to go. Startups are becoming more successful. VCs will, obviously get better recovery on their investments, and therefore we also get to participate in the upside that we have created. So that's our business model. So there's no commissions, there's no fees, retainer, nothing like that.
Yeah.
Everything is only when the company becomes successful, we also become successful. So it worked very well for us. The same thing that I said on the corporate side also, we are building various cities into corporate innovation hubs across the world. And that's also something that we are doing under the Hypergrowth umbrella. So a lot of interesting things that we are doing. Another, let's say, a T-Hub ecosystem being built in various places across the world.
What's your role in TIE, and how is TIE also collaborating with Hypergrowth? What's your journey with TIE?
Oh, my journey with TIE is a very long one. 25 years ago. So maybe I should tell you the story of my TIE story. I was doing my second startup, and my father-in-law happened to be visiting me at that time in Washington DC area. He saw that I was spending all nights pretty much till 3 o'clock in the morning working on the product and stuff like that with my co-founders, and go to sleep at like 3 o'clock, wake up at like 8 o'clock, have breakfast, take the children to the bus stop, and then come back. Not the bus stop, at that time they were very young, so to the daycare center and all that. And then I come back and start working and so on and so forth. And I had quit my job from IBM at that time, and my wife was working at that time, and we had twins, young boys. So he was very worried. Okay, first of all, I don't have a steady job. I'm working extremely hard, but for what reason he didn't understand.
You had the vision there, rather.
So he called up one of his friends and he said, I don't know, this guy says he's doing something called a startup. What does that mean? I don't know. But is he doing the right things? And I don't know, he's working very hard. I can see that for sure. So that friend of his on the other side of the line, he said, you know what? Just ask him to come to Silicon Valley. We are having something called a TiCon coming up soon. And so my father-in-law said, you know, next weekend is something called TiCon. This friend of mine is saying, why can you just look at the website and see if it makes any sense to you? He's suggesting that you should go. So I said, I looked at it and I passed it on to my co-founders, and they also looked at it. And then our thinking was, see, we have a product to build, we have money to raise, we have to therefore I had to write a business plan, and we need customers. Which of these three is being served by going to TiCon? And so we basically dismissed it and moved on and kept on working on our stuff. So Friday comes, Saturday, Sunday is TiCon, and my father-in-law got a call from this gentleman on the other side saying, yeah, so is Ravi coming? Tomorrow is TiCon, because he was the chair of TiCon at that time. So my father-in-law said, I don't know, I have told him, gave him the website, everything. So I said, okay, give the phone to him, let me talk to him. So my father-in-law came and gave me the phone and said, please speak to my friend. So this person on the other side said, Ravi? I said, yes, my name is Suhas Patil. I said, do you know who I am? I said, yeah, of course, sir, I know you. He said, yeah, so I'm the chair of TiCon this time, so why don't you come tomorrow? I said, tomorrow you want me to come? Yeah, do you want to be a successful entrepreneur? I said, of course, sir, I want to be a successful entrepreneur. So then he said, then I'll see you tomorrow, okay? And then he put the phone.
You had no options left.
So then I called up my co-founders and said, boss, each of us had put $10,000 from our own personal savings. Of course, we are not taking any salary, nothing meaningful we could do. So that was where I asked them, what should I do? They said, okay, go. If he is calling and he is asking you to come, go. I said, why don't you guys also come? They said, no, we can't afford that.
Understandable.
So I took a Southwest Airlines from BWI, something like 6 in the morning, arrived at like 9 o'clock, 9:30, 10 o'clock, something like that, in Oakland, in California. So this was the cheapest airline I could find, and then I drove from there to San Jose to attend TiCon. Of course, I was late. By the time I arrived there, it was already lunchtime. So there, at that time, it was all of Saturday and half of Sunday. That was TiCon. It was not being done during the weekdays, because they said no one will come. If you do it during the weekday, everybody has a job to do, this, that, they won't come. So I had missed already half the Saturday. But I went. But as I went in, people, I could see the conversations, the kind of people that are there, and so on and so forth. So I kind of went in and I said, I'm looking for Suhas Patil. They said, who are you? I said, I've just registered, I'm coming to attend TiCon. They said, yeah, Suhas mentioned you, and so on and so forth. So I got to meet, these were very early days, I'm talking about 1999, when I met Suhas Patil, Kanwal Rekhi, Desh Deshpande, then at that time, B.V. Jagdish. B.V. Jagdish was a mentee of Kanwal Rekhi.
Oh, wow.
Who was also there. So all of us, all of them were, very happy to see me and so on and so forth. And when I thought I was just one of the several guys that had made this kind of a crazy trip. It looks like I was the only one who made that trip. So Suhas was so proud of me. He said, he took me to all these people and said, I told him last night to come and he has shown up and all that. But, besides the story, what did I get out of it? See, I still attended the same sessions. There were sessions on how to manage your team, how to build a good team, how to protect your intellectual property, all that stuff. Now you would ask, okay, what is different about it? What did you get out of it? Because I was struggling with these three issues: what product to build, how to get customers, and how to raise money. None of this answered that question directly. But what I found was, I saw that I was not alone in this journey. There were several people in this journey that have crossed the milestones that I was trying to reach. They had already crossed it. They spoke a different language. They had a certain set of conviction about them. By just rubbing shoulders with them, I also reached the same level of conviction. I spoke the same language, and I was able to feel that I'm not alone. I'm not doing anything unique. I'm doing something very similar to other people's journey.
And you're on the right track.
Well, I could get there. I knew I could make that happen. But the most important thing is that led me to be able to be much more articulate, much more focused on what success means for me, and so on and so forth. So as a manifestation of that conviction, I raised $500,000 in debt almost immediately. I had put in the application, but I was not able to get them to release the money. But I was able to do that because I spoke with much more conviction, authority, whatever. Thereafter, we raised $2 million in Series A at that time. And then eventually $12 million a year later. So within about 14 months after that, I had already raised about 18 months, I had raised about $14 million, $14.5 million. So that was a manifestation of our ability to be much more, clear about what we are doing, where are our customers, all that good stuff. So in a way, it fundamentally changes you, TIE.
So that's how the TIE whole journey started with you.
Correct. So then I was a associate member. There was no TIE chapter in Washington, D.C. It was only in the Bay Area and a couple of other places, Boston. Yeah. So then, eventually over a period of time, I brought TIE into D.C. And then after which I moved to Bangalore. Bangalore already had a TIE. And then I came in as a charter member for the first time because I was doing my third company and so on and so forth. And, so what I gained in my second startup through all the, wonderful environment, wonderful people. So every single person that I met, Kanwal put me in touch with B.V. Jagdish. B.V. Jagdish did a bunch of things with me. Both Suhas and Desh, they put me in touch with some VCs. So everybody played a role, one way or the other. They were always there. Very unassuming, but they were always there.
All thanks to your father-in-law.
Exactly. And then, I'm trying to do something similar for other people who are aspiring to go down the same path. So in a way, that's been fulfilling. So while I am doing this, but I'm also getting a lot out of it. I'm learning new things. I am able to create that spark of clarity in people's minds. Suddenly they say, of course. And when you see that, you say, man, I think this is great. So the mentoring part and all that comes from that. And, one of the things that I found is, as an entrepreneur, there is no clear corporate ladder for me to go and a path to take on, right? So from being a director to a senior director to a VP, this is a corporate path, right? In my case, I don't have one.
It's
So
very random.
a lot of this happens through just the network.
Understood.
And the network is built in the most, I would say, uncompetitive, not a very strained, kind of an environment, which is time. And a lot of these relationships are built, and lots of things back and forth go between us, and it just feels like we are all part of the friend circle, right?
Amazing. So, one last question to you, Ravi. Uh, I heard in your TEDx talk about your Indic philosophy, how you
Yeah.
connect that with the entrepreneur's journey and how it correlates. Alongside that, I would also want to put you a question that what is the message that you would like to give, because you are a mentor, okay, and what is that you would like to share as one thing that if I ask you to share across. Taking these two cues, I want you to answer one last time here in this episode.
Yeah, so I spoke about the ashramas, which is basically what I've done in the TED this thing, and that's an important thing because I feel every startup is a lifetime into itself. You go through a huge learning curve, which is a brahmacharya, to taking on a set of responsibilities and making sure everybody is taken care of properly. And making money is not a sin, not a problem. Money can be made legitimately, legally,
Ethically.
ethically, and which is what you need to do in your grahastha, and eventually be able to give back before you say, okay, I have to move on. Sometimes you become irrelevant to the organization that you have created. You have to find a way to move on. So I think a lot of these things are there for us to learn in the Indic philosophy. There's also the thing about Purushartha. What is the reason for our life? What is the reason that you want to, what do you want to accomplish during your, all that, And a big thing, a lot of times that we struggle with is dharma. What is the right way of doing certain things, for you, for the organization? It's never easy. And if you're able to learn from a lot of these things, there's so much that we have in the knowledge of life that is applicable to knowledge of entrepreneurship. So I think that's one thing that I feel is very important for us to take away.
Absolutely.
But also I feel, a lot of entrepreneurs are people who are very, very passionate about what they're doing, which they should be. But the passion should not be at the extent of taking away other aspects of their lives. I think for them to prioritize their responsibility to the family that they have, the friend circle that they have, is very important. They can't be doing certain things at the expense of all the other things, because they also are somehow part of your journey too, willingly or unwillingly. And therefore, for you to discharge your responsibilities towards them is absolutely important.
Yeah, I can resonate as an entrepreneur what you're trying to say. The weight of quantifying these things are highly important. Absolutely, yes.
And then there is the health aspect of it. Your own health, because you are potentially the pillar for both the startup and for your family. And if that pillar breaks, a lot of things will crumble. And if you're not able to do that, so people don't pay too much attention to their physical health, leave alone mental health. And sometimes the expenses are so high that neither will you be successful with your current entrepreneurial journey, but you have taken away the possibility of being successful in any entrepreneurial journey or future entrepreneurial journeys, right? So how do you make sure that you have a balanced life where you are able to do everything else that demands so much out of you, while you continue to be serving the purpose of taking your startup to the next level? how do you be a good entrepreneur? I think it's a testament to, how you manage your purushartha, right? What is the reason you're a human being? What is the reason you're being an entrepreneur? So these are questions that people need to face. So I recommend that most entrepreneurs can get a lot if they learn how to learn to meditate, learn how to do yoga, learn how to manage stress, learn how to do some physical activity of some sort or the other, which all has an impact in your success. You think it's taking time away from something, but sometimes just doing these things, provide you so much more capability to do a better job on all the other aspects of life. So you were asking me about how do I go to Japan and then I come and do this thing. First of all, I love what I'm doing. So obviously I will do what I love doing, and it doesn't take anything away from me when I love what I'm doing already. But also I think one of the things that I have been doing is all these things, the meditation, the yoga, this thing, which has stood me in great stead. So the ability for me to put a lot of these disturbances in my head to rest, and therefore I have clarity of thought, clarity of vision, clarity on my purpose. That is so much easier for me to do, just because I am able to take away those ripples, so that I am able to have some calmness in the waters, so I can reflect on certain things. I think it's very important for people to not get too carried away by activity, but get carried away by progress, carried away by meaningful accomplishments, both inside the startup and outside the startup.
Ravi, now coming to a quick round in between a rapid fire round. I would just ask you a quick questions to you. Just tell me what it sounds to you. Are you a coffee person or tea person?
Tea.
You got 5 minutes to impress aliens. Would you show them or not?
Yes, of course.
What's a weird talent or a party trick most people don't know about you?
Well, I'm a dancer, a Bharatanatyam dancer.
Oh wow, this was unknown. Okay. Okay. What's your most irrational fear? Like unexplainably weird?
Well, being unwell.
Unwell. Strangest place you have taken a work call from?
There's so many strange places. Yeah, it happened maybe just a couple of days ago. I was sitting in a concert of some kind, a lot of loud music, and I was taking a call right in the middle of that.
Which board game describes your startup journey? Chess, Monopoly, or Snake and Ladders?
Snake and ladders.
Snake and Ladders. Okay. Name one app that you wish you had ever been invented.
Name an app?
Which you thought that you had invented that app.
I think the mindfulness app, whatever that is, meditation app.
A fictional character, if I have to ask you to correlate with Ravi Narayan, who it could be?
Krishna, Sri Krishna.
Wow. Any superhero you admire?
Yeah, Hanuman.
Hanuman. What's your guilty pleasure snack during the late night brainstorming?
Yeah, chocolate.
Chocolate. South Indian food or North Indian?
South Indian.
Thank you, Ravi. Thank you. Thanks for the rapid fire round. A lot of learnings, many fundamentals. I think we all tend to miss all of these, but I can understand the value in which these can add up to the growth. It was a very deep dive discussion with you. Thank you for gracing an episode by Pace Wisdom. As an entrepreneur, I also take a lot of learnings which are priceless. Thanks for this wonderful discussion. Many eye openers, and the amount of success you have seen is phenomenal. Thank you for gracing an episode. Thank you, Ravi.
Thank you for inviting me. Thanks for listening to me. I don't know if I had anything different from what you have already heard, but
Absolutely.
definitely.
See, there are so many unsung heroes like you. Everybody has a different journey. Everybody has a different take. And every episode is very unique because the path in which each of them have chosen to go is very vibrant, very different. In that journey, they identify many things which are tremendously awesome. And those are priceless to share because not everybody can go in all the journeys. That's the count that we have. Sharing those experiences are very important, and that's how this podcast is being designed. Thank you. Thanks again, Ravi.
Thank you.
Thank you.